today on Atlanta Live. I'm so excited because I think this is such an interesting subject, but I'm sitting here with Dr. Craig Chandler, and he is the author of A Separation Survival Guide for Military Couples. And, you know, marriage is under so much stress as it is. So you can only imagine when you add the stress of separation, of war, of the tension that military personnel are already under just because of the nature of their job. So I'm really excited about the opportunity to talk to you about this. So Dr. Chandler, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate
Absolutely,
it.
absolutely. Well, before we get into the book, you are a veteran of the armed forces,
Yes.
not just the Air Force, but
Right.
primarily.
Exactly.
You're a retired chaplain. You were in the military for over 25 years, right?
29, actually.
Wow, look at that. Yeah,
long
so
time.
if anyone can talk about this, you can.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about military life, because you know most civilians, quote unquote civilians, don't
Right.
know what it is to be in the military. So kind of give us an overview of what military life is all about.
Depending whether you're active or reserve, of course, starting out, myself personally started with the Army National Guards, and many of the young people are going through that now in terms of the training. It actually changes your lifestyle in terms of what you embrace initially. And then, of course, if you're active duty, it changes in terms of your obligation to service. And you no longer, most civilian jobs, you can quit and say, I'll take this job and do whatever, you know. But military, you sign a contract for 4 years at least. And then you're obligated to be in that particular, whether it's a military base or station abroad. And so you kind of lock into another world.
Okay.
And military life, of course, has its own standards that you have to adhere to.
That's right.
And when you don't adhere to it, they have means of dismissing you. But the lifestyle is different. And many times, and we talk about it, how families are, singles and families are taken away from your home and you're assigned somewhere, many times separated from family, friends, and you're located in another world, so to speak. And you have to make a life for yourself. And so it creates a different lifestyle, and then you add on kids to that, or children, starting out young, and then sometimes you have to pick up and move and go places that you don't want to go, or some places you may want to go. Every individual have to adapt, and some enjoy that experience of touring the world. Others, you know, want to stay put and have the same address and phone number for a lifetime.
I understand.
And so I guess we can get into the aspect of the stress and how it puts a strain on families.
Is the military of today different than the military you were involved in over 25 years ago?
Yeah, we hear that a lot. Military life has changed. And in some regards, it's the same in terms of the training and those kinds of things, but the whole atmosphere has changed. The generations have changed. Society have changed. And of course, you'll have the whole multimedia aspect. And of course, the mentality of individuals, you know, coming into the military. We pick up some things from society and we bring it in, and so there's another mentality, and it's related to those in civilian world, but in terms of how we deal with relationships, in terms of our values, whether it be Christian values or whether it be just moral values, and all of that, you know, it's just changed over the years, and I look at it in another way in terms of employment and attention to duty and loyalty. All those are certainly an influence, different. And many of our, we call it the old timers, you know, they said, no, this is much different, and we wouldn't put up with some things, but that's, you know, that's the nature of the beast, so to speak. Times have changed, and we see a lot of things going on in our world.
That's true. That's, I'm sure, pervasive throughout every sector, including the military.
Yes.
What was the appeal of the military to you that made you decide to dedicate 29 years?
I started out and of course, I have to give my hometown, Kingstree, South Carolina, the jobs, similar to many communities nowadays, weren't forthcoming, and graduated an undergraduate out of high school, but I found it difficult to find a job, you know, a solid job, and so I got recruited by one of my neighbors, Mr. Hatfield, at the gas station that I worked at.
Oh, okay.
And he encouraged me to sign up for the Guard, and I did, and went through the training, got back on, to make a long story short, and started attending monthly drill. And of course, my background in terms of the farm and everything, I was motivated to do things to make, you know, to look good. look sharp, and I got rewarded for it. And when I put the uniform on, all the girls, all the people, everybody, everybody in the neighborhood enjoyed me in uniform. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the rewards. And I said, if I just love this on the weekend, what more would I enjoy, you know, every day?
Exactly.
And so that prompted me to sign up for active duty. And the rest is history. I mean,
what was your favorite part of being in the military?
Oh, the experience. Of course, I was from a small town, not going very far from home, kind of a homebody. Just the experience of touring different places, embracing various cultures, seeing, you know, like I said, different cultures, different. Of course, even in church, my church was traveling everywhere. Of course, the job experience is expanding my so-called, my father was a mechanic amidst other things, jack of all trade, but just embracing different career fields for me. Being in, I call it a desk job, when they call it logistics now, but it was supply then. And I did a tour of duty of recruiting young men and women in the military, and did some church chapel assistance and becoming a chaplain. So all of those experiences really was fueled my desire to continue and to help people, and I really enjoyed that.
Wonderful. So you now, having all this experience and knowing what it's like, you raised a family while you were in the military, basically.
Yes.
Married in the military. Now, was your wife in the military as well?
No, she wasn't.
Okay.
She was in college when I met her. St. Augustine College. I'm giving her a plug for the day. College. But she was in college when I met her.
Okay.
And I was on a visit there in the city of Raleigh, and we met. And about 2 years later, the Lord kind of put us together. And again, she graduated. She was in a teaching field as well.
Okay.
And so we met, and the Lord put us together. And we were married, and the first base of assignment, just a quick funny story, we were riding back from our honeymoon, and a plane flew over the car, real noisy plane, they call it the F-4 fighter plane, and it flew, and it made such a loud noise, we had the bench seat in the car, and she slid over. That was her introduction into the Air Force. But, you know, kind of the thing, she was a little afraid. But yeah, we grew up, we started out about 3 years after I was active duty, and, you know, family took on after that. A year later, my son was born at a military base. Okay. And 5 years later, my daughter was born at a military base. And so we kind of grew together.
So you're an expert. You can talk about this really well. So what have you seen over the years, and even in your own marriage, as some of the challenges that military families have to face that maybe traditional marriages, you know, outside of the military, civilian marriages don't have to face?
Yeah, one of the things initially, when we mentioned children, we're dislocated. Many of us are dislocated. A few are fortunate enough to be in the same town if the military base is there, but for a vast majority, we're dislocated from family. And so
when you say family, you're talking about extended family?
Extended family, immediate family, extended family. We didn't have the mom there to help with the kids and take them over and do child care and those kind of things. Many times we had to fend for ourselves and try to, you know, the military has, you know, the child care centers and all of that, but again, they're not family. They're paid services, and they do well for what they do. But again, many times those in the civilian community, they can use their family members to come over, or you take them over and give you a break. And so a lot of military couples have that to deal with, and certainly nowadays with the deployments, they have to make arrangements if both are a military, or if one is military, then that person has to do it all on themselves.
Plus, I'm sure the stress, because I'm certain you and your wife probably were separated during those 25 years.
Oh, sure.
I could only imagine being away from the person I love and not being able to share those day-to-day things, you know, just the little things that you don't think are important until you're living with someone, you want to share it with them, they're not there, the stressors, and you know he or she is dealing with their own stress away because they may be on a base where they're dealing with tough issues.
Sure.
So when you have those kinds of dynamics going on, what kind of stress does that put on your relationship?
Oh, it puts a heavy stress on, and again, many times it's the one left home. If you do have children, you're managing the household, you're taking care of all the day-to-day business and dealing with the children, and many times when they're separated, children have a way sometimes of misbehaving or playing on the one that's left.
Is there a level of guilt you feel as well?
In many ways it is, because the one is the one that is away. The whole idea of, okay, you're not here to deal with all of this. I'm here dealing with this. You're having a wonderful time, in some regards. So the guilt is on the one that's away, and then on the other hand, the one that's away, if they are concerned about their wife or their husband who is at home, they're feeling guilty because their hands are tied. And so I've had that experience, where your hands are tied, you can't do much, when you're separated. And so there's on both sides there's difficulty, and so part of that we experienced, and my largest separation, of course, was being away a year, and some of the aspects that I dealt with was again being separated from family, as well as the whole idea of the temptation that are there.
Because I'm sure there's a lot of infidelity.
Definitely, and that's part of one of the major issue that I address, because as a chaplain, of course, I was away for that year, and I saw a lot of that, counseled a lot of individuals struggling with it, some engaged in that aspect, and brought a major threat to their family back home. And so having to deal with that, I see it firsthand, saw it firsthand.
So at what point did you say, you know what, it's time for me to address this with some real practical survival skills, so to speak? Because, in the military, I'm sure you all are used to dealing with survival skills. So
definitely. When
did you decide, you know what, I really want to do more than just talk about this thing, but I want to provide some help?
Yes. Over the years, and I bring it back to the year of separation, I saw that. And I dealt with it and counseled folks. It happened during the time that 9/11 took place. And of course that time away, and then experiencing that. Once I returned from that, and of course we all know the war in Afghanistan and Iraq took place a year later. In terms of 2000, well, things were going on then, but then it spun up in 2003, the Iraqi freedom. And so I was concerned while I was separated, but I became concerned because the deployments started on a regular basis. In other words, 6 months deployment, a year deployment. They were frequently separated. So I was inspired by the Lord, I believe. Well, in fact, I know it was because he wanted me to do a doctoral degree and study, do a doctoral study. And one of the studies, I was going to do it on leadership or on families. And so the core was dealing with family because my whole life, tied in with that. And so my study was to say, okay, what is the military doing with families, and how are they taking care of the families? And for the most part, they were taking care of the families in many areas. The issue of infidelity was one that I felt that needed to be addressed because I saw it as an epidemic as I talked to counselors.
And very quickly, because we're running short on time, talk a little bit, what are some of the tips that people will get in this book? Because even though it's for the military, infidelity is happening in marriages, whether they're military or not. So this is something that could benefit any marriage, but give us some real quick tips that people can find in your book.
One of the quick tips for anyone, especially again the military, because they're at a higher stress level, and that is to avoid any traps. And of course we talk about traps on the battlefield, but there are relationship traps on the battlefield and at home. To avoid anything that would jeopardize your relationship with your spouse. There are tips in the book specifically dealing with all those areas, to include internet, to include Facebook, yes, Twitter, all of those, chat rooms and all of those. Those are major problems, infidelity, internet infidelities. And of course, we talk about the clubs and all the different medias or the different distractions, I would say. Those are things to avoid, to maintain, in other words, not to jeopardize your relationship, and then many other things. But the other part of it is not all the negative, but is to I give them tips on how to build a strong marriage, how to adhere to commitment, and how to stand strong on their understanding of each other, and sometimes that's difficult, but to persevere through difficult times. And that's what I share, many principles to persevere through difficult times.
And I would think that's important, because you would know if you're going into the military, you're going to be in an unusually stressful situation anyway. So it seems to me that a practical guide like this becomes increasingly important. Because you got to take those precautions, just just like you train before you go into warfare.
That's right.
You train before you go into marriage.
That's right. That's right. And that's what we need. And sometimes we think love is going to carry us through it all, but no. We need some guidelines.
No, that's right.
That's right.
And that's why you wrote it. It's the practical principles for protecting your marriage while separated, a separation survival guide for military couples.
Yes.
Where can people go to learn more about your book?
You can go at my website at either drcraigchandler.com or craigchandler.com, and that's spelled C-R-E-G-G. A little different, chandler.com.
Okay, wonderful. Well, Dr. Chandler, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. He's got some really great information in here. You know, I like the biological warfare, understanding human biological warfare, psychological warfare. Marriage is the foundation of our communities, our homes, because you have a strong marriage, you have a strong community,
That's right.
you know, and again, we just want to thank you for being here and deeming this important enough to put your pen to it.
Yes, thank you so
much.
I
And
appreciate
thank
it.
you for your service.
Amen. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, yes, and we want to thank you for being here with us on Atlanta Live. We have so many great guests